Coming up today on Locked On at Texas Tech, a recipe for success in 2024. Kill the quarterback and don't let the other guys kill ours. Simple enough.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. And right now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, it truly feels like a game week now as we had a Joey McGuire press luncheon in the rear view. And today we're going to take a listen to some thoughts from Coach McGuire as the week rolls on. We'll get into some thoughts from offensive coordinator Zach Kittley, DC Tim DeRuyter from the same affair. But a couple of different things to get into today, including some keys to a successful season as Coach McGuire sees it, really spanning both sides of the football. We'll talk offensively and defensively what needs to be done for the Red Raiders this year. But kicking off the conversation, we just got to get it out of the way. You might have seen a depth chart released, a coach's favorite word, or employed in many different ways, and could have been employed even further, according to Coach McGuire. But, of course, one of the most interesting spots everybody focusing in on was along that offensive line, particularly where Caleb Rogers will factor in. Looks like it will be on the right side. And surprise, surprise, that was one of the first questions pitched to Coach McGuire here today.
Feel good about the right side. I think all three of them will rotate. Whenever we scrimmaged or when we did the mock game, it was Davion and Caleb with the first group. When we did scrimmage number 2, it was Ty Buchanan and Caleb with the first group. And so whenever it's funny, Coach Blanchard and I, James and I have talked a lot about this. Offensive line is for whatever reason, offensive line is the only position in football that we've got to have a set 5. Like everybody's in this panic of this chemistry and all this stuff. And I get that a little bit. So our mindset is the chemistry runs through number 76 because no matter who it is, Caleb Rogers is going to be out there. So if Caleb Rogers is at right guard and Ty's at right tackle, the chemistry's there. And if Caleb is at right tackle and Davion's starting at right guard, the chemistry's with those two guys. We'll see. I expect all three of those guys to play on Saturday and probably whenever you look at the snap count, pretty close to equal.
Whole lot to digest there that I thought was really interesting, Chris. The headline of the comment, though, the chemistry runs through number 76, that being Caleb Rogers. So curious to hear what you made of that sentiment and in general what he had to say about finding those best 5.
What I hear him saying is that it sounds like Sterling Porche is your starter at left tackle. Okay, so we can. I hate to say we can eliminate one scenario because you don't ultimately know, but of the scenarios that we've suggested, it just doesn't appear that the one that includes Ty Buchanan playing left tackle is in play anymore. Based on the depth chart that we got and based on the conversation that you just heard from Joey, this is now – so we introduced, I think, 3 different scenarios, I don't know, a week ago, a few days ago, whatever it was, that involved, Davion Carter and Sterling Porche and Caleb Rogers kind of all at different spots and all 3 of them kind of being in a different spot and a couple of them being out altogether of the starting lineup. Anyway, long story short, it just sounds like that Caleb Rogers and it's the lead there is in a way it's not, this isn't breaking news. This isn't news really in general, but this is something we've touched on, and this is just the way it is. It is the one position group on the team where you just don't rotate. You don't go, hey, second group, get in there. Y'all take a series. No, that's unheard of. And it, in some ways, that's lunacy. And why is that? Because there's not that many big people in the world that are quality, and ready to handle this job, especially working together in unison like a good offensive line must do. And
bingo.
Yeah, I mean, that's just the only other position really on the team, and I even think that this is changing a bit. The only other position on the team is really quarterback. I mean, and you don't rotate kickers typically. You may give a guy, hey, you get these kicks, and then okay, if it's not working, we're going to go to the other guy. But you're not just like rotating that and all that stuff. Rare is it that you keep a kicking competition like into a season, like an alternate and all that. It's just that's bad vibes. I mean, have we seen that before? I mean, very occasionally, but that's just not the norm. But offensive line, man, it's like this sweet music being played when done properly, and then when it's not, it's like nails on a chalkboard. It's like, oh God, I mean, or God, that sounds terrible. I mean, so
and our quarterback's broken in half.
Can be.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. I mean, Georgia Tech just beat Florida State over the weekend by dominating the line of scrimmage, specifically on the offensive line. They had all 5 starters back from last year. Florida State's defensive line is supposed to be, I've seen multiple people suggest and write, the best position group or starting unit in the country. All 4 defensive linemen for Florida State are projected to be drafted in the top 100 of the NFL draft next year. Again, on paper, this was the conversation. And that group up front, with some help of some tight ends and some motion and some different things, they owned the line of scrimmage. They won a football game against a ranked opponent and negated this strength of the opposition. This is what you want. This is what you strive for. But that group had played together a bunch and all that, and that's what Texas Tech is trying to create. I'll be real interested to see how much they do rotate the right side of that line with the trio of players for the 2 spots. It's just tricky, and I'm not saying it can't be done, and I'm not saying it can't be done well. It's an outlier of how how it's been done before, and it's kind of goes back to the whole. Part of you wants to say it's kind of like when you have 2 quarterbacks. We'd love them both, man. We're going to alternate them and all that. Well, it means you really don't have one. I mean, so do you really have 5 starters if you have 6? I don't know. I guess we'll kind of find out. I do like the depth component. I just don't know what this is going to look like rotating in and out, because the chemistry with that group and everything it's just paramount. It's just is.
Well, and we got to remember, we're talking about week 1 against Abilene Christian. I doubt, week 6, week 7 in the Big 12 conference, they hope to be talking about the same things as far as rotation is concerned.
True.
But you would like to, with all due respect to the Purple Wildcats, you would like to believe that this could be a weekend for experimenting at some point in the game, where you would like to believe that you've got a healthy margin. Now, we've thought that would be the case previously, and you've been in some tight ball games against inferior opponents, at least when it comes to resources. So,
and I will just offer this up, food for thought along those lines. 2 years ago, I mean, Missouri right now, I think they're like top 10 or 15. But okay, 2 years ago, Abilene Christian plays these guys. Final score, 34-17. Last year, they go to College Station. A&M's pretty good, a lot of talent. And whatnot. Some chaos going on down there too, and the coaching change and whatnot. But still, they've got 5 stars and all the things. 38-10. I just offer that up to suggest that this will be a bit of a fight here, and a 40-point win would be more the exception rather than the rule, based on the way ACU. I mean, heck, they've got 6 former dudes that were good enough to play for you at one point. So we'll kind of see what that looks like. I just wanted to toss that out there.
Yeah. Well, and a head coach that we respect as well. So don't want to take anything for granted. I mean, I remember a walk-off win against Texas State not too long ago, for crying out loud. So anything can happen in the opening weekend, regardless of the opponent. I think we all know that.
Was that a Cody Davis interception return for a touchdown or a punt return?
That was at Texas State. That was on the road in San Marcos.
Okay, because
this
Cody
was
Davis was involved there somewhere.
I swear this was oh man, Eric Stevens may not be the right name, but like a Eric Stevens halfback pass, something like that in the I'm going to say southeast end zone once upon a time, and maybe I have the opponent wrong, but there were a few things you were sweating out in the non-conference portion of your schedule. Obviously,
Seth Nagy did that against Nevada one time, I think.
Maybe that's what I'm confusing it with.
But
hey, why?
Yeah.
Why need to shake off the no need to shake off the cobwebs and go back that far. Anybody remember a trip to Wyoming last year? So I know it's not exactly the same circumstance, but let's be ready to go. One thing that Coach McGuire was asked about as well was keys to the season. Now, he broke it down very simply from an offensive and defensive standpoint. I want to get to coming up in a moment. Has to do with keeping our quarterback upright and killing the other guy's quarterback. But first, Chris, I want to get into something else that he talked about as a key to a successful season. First, today's episode brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. 5 Hour Energy fixes tired fast. Whether you have a long list of tasks at work or a bundle of do-it-yourself projects to tackle at home, take a 5 Hour Energy shot so you can cover everything with energy to spare. If you're like me, you've always got a lengthy list of things to get done around the house. So when you're getting your supplies for any project, don't forget the most essential one, a 5 Hour Energy shot. 5 Hour Energy shots give you the feeling of alertness and energy you need to get in the zone. And that's why 5 Hour Energy is the brand hardworking people like you have trusted for over 20 years to give them the alert, energized feeling they need to get through a busy and hectic day. And you always know where to find 5 Hour Energy shots, right at the cash register at nearly every convenience, drug, and grocery store nationwide. And even better, you can stock up on money-saving multi-packs to make sure you never run out of delicious, energizing 5 Hour Energy shots. And right now, if you go to 5hourenergy.com, that's the number 5hourenergy.com, and get some 5 Hour Energy today, you can use our promo code LOCKEDONCFB. That's LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. Hurry, because this offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions and does not apply to subscription orders. Boost your day and boost your life and get in the Get It Done zone by going to 5hourenergy.com today. I want to get into something else that he talked about as a key to a successful season, which I thought was really interesting. It's a little bit more broad or abstract, so to speak. You know, it reminded me of how often we've talked about, hey, they're finishing the season strong. You like to see a team getting better as the year goes on. Well, sometimes that finish is a little more glaring because you didn't start out that way. Now, we don't always include that part in the conversation. Like, hey, we really liked how they finished. It felt great in tandem with how bad you felt about some of the things that happened early on. And it hasn't been like crisis territory, but you've had some like 500 starts, you know, through 5 or 6 games to get out of the gates. You want a quicker start to really set up something interesting as you get to October and November. And that was something else that Coach McGuire talked about this week.
Playing well early. We've played well late, so we've got to continue doing that. But we have the opportunity having 5 out of our first 7 games at home. I know that Red Raider Nation is going to show up for those games, so we need to get off to a fast start. If you look at year 1 and year 2, we've been 3-3 after 6 games. We can't be that this year and expect to do what we want to do in November and December.
And something that may be a little bit lost on fans, Chris, but the opportunity that this team has because of what he pointed to, where you're playing the majority of your games to begin the season. Now, you got some big challenges, obviously, as you hit the road. But I thought that was really interesting of him to point out that, yeah, the playing late is great, obviously, but 3-3 or whatever it might be through 6 is not what they're wanting to repeat in 2024.
Yeah, and what's crazy about the playing late or playing well late, which 6-2 in November, I think we've touched on. this was a criticism for really the last many coaches that were here. Like always would just start off and then just would fizzle and never could get over the hump. And Joey's in his tenure in his first 2 years, it's kind of been, the opposite, where they kind of hit the skids a bit early or just kind of get out of the gate slower and then really get it going. I don't want to skip past, and I'm not, but I mean, this Washington State game is just going to be massive from that standpoint, because if you don't manage your non-conference schedule correctly, it's hard to get out of the gate the right way and really have eyes on a special season again, it doesn't mean you can't contend for the conference championship if you slip up in the non-conference, but it's a tone setter. It's with a younger team in some aspects. I just think that it's tricky to the old psyche there if you kind of stumble early, because you're not sure, okay, do we get some doubt creeping in? Do they not, does somebody go into business for themselves? I mean, who knows? But that's why that game next week in Pullman will be so big. But you got obviously business to take care of early. And it's worth pointing out one of the problems that I think that they have identified, and I don't really know how you fix it. It's one thing to talk about it. We talked about this some this summer too. Joey mentioned this to me at the tail end of last season on a coach's show, as he was already kind of looking toward the off season and all those things. I don't know if you remember where I'm going with this here, but it was next year. I just want to be better at knowing what we are earlier, know exactly what our identity is much earlier in the season than we did this year, which was last year. So he's telling me this at the end of last season about earlier on in that year.
Yeah.
So you can talk about it and you can, because if they knew the way they could run it last year, they probably would have done it more early, and they just didn't really have that feel yet. And some of that is, just lack of chemistry on the offensive line and lack of, playmakers and all these things and whatnot. But I think they've probably made a conscious effort to understand and self-scout and know their team better now than they did. But I don't really know how you do that. I'm just pointing that out because he said this is what we must do. And so however they feel like they needed to, but that's a key to me to winning early, is kind of having a good feel for what you are versus what you are not.
One idea as to how to go about that is to maybe keep any and all offensive coordinators from outthinking the room, which they are obviously prone to do. And I wouldn't put it necessarily all at the feet of Zach Kittley, but when I heard that comment this offseason or late into the year last year, I'm thinking, because I thought everybody and their mama knew that this was an offense that should be oriented around Taj Brooks. Part of that having to do with the lack of confidence in the offensive line's ability to keep a quarterback upright. Another part of that having to do with the lack of confidence in the pass catcher's ability to be dynamic playmakers, two things we still saw come to fruition last year. And then another big part of that having to do with the fact that Taj Brooks is the best skill player on your football team. So I haven't known quite what to make of that as to why they didn't know that, like, it should be 80% this way, 20% the other way or whatever. And that's probably an extreme percentage. But I do think I just come back sort of thinking about an offensive coordinator going through fall camp, and I got these fancy plays drawn up, and boy, they're sure working well in camp when we've got, guys that can't touch the quarterback and all this stuff going on, and just an OC's nature in general, wanting to go chess when sometimes it maybe just needs to be checkers. These are just guesses in my mind because I wasn't in fall camp last year to see what they were doing or what they weren't doing. But like I said, I thought everybody and their mom knew that it was Taj Brooks or bust. But through the first few weeks of the season, it was like he was an afterthought as far as the game plan. Then, thank God, we really saw it transition totally the other way as the season went on.
Remember, though, who the top player was on paper coming into last year on offense? It was Jerron Bradley. He was a first-team All-Big 12 player coming into the year last year. Taj Brooks, nowhere to be mentioned. Tyler Shuck, not really there. But I just think they have a better feel for those things. Now you understand what Taj can do. Here's what it comes down to, though. It's really what we were talking about at the beginning of the conversation, if we're just talking on offense. Because I think Tim on defense, you have a feel for, you've got some depth and you've got some multiple things you can do with different packages. But I mean, is this a team that's going to be really good at pressuring the QB, or really good in coverage, or really good in the takeaway? I don't know if we know that. It needs to be all of it. But on offense, it's really about that group up front. And that's why I'm trying to say, it's hard to ultimately know what you are when you don't really know who that group is up front yet, and I tend to think, this particular group may be more suited to more of the pass pro than the run pro. There's not as much bulk up front.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, I think Mason and Baylor Cup better blocking tight end duo than what Mason and Jalen Conyers or John Carlos Miller are going to be. I just don't think that's really what John Carlos and Jalen's strength is. But I do think they'll be much more scary out in patterns and mismatches and all that. So you just have to factor that in. So I don't know.
As we're trying to know. Well, I was going to say, as we're trying to know what a group's going to be, add 3 transfers to the mix. Is that helping out?
Yeah.
It's just like throw your hands up. Like, here we go again. Let's find out what we are together. But I know there's one guy on that side of the ball that can turn chicken spit into chicken soup. He wears number 28. So when all else fails, just jam it right there. Bone. To borrow a phrase from Little Giants. Okay, Chris, let's wrap it up. And we'll cover
the ball. Run the ball.
Yeah. We'll cover both sides of the football really here in some of these final thoughts from Coach McGuire as far as keys are concerned. First, today's episode brought to you by Ultimate College Football Head Coach. Locked On Texas Tech fans, I want to take a moment to give you a heads up on a brand new mobile game that I think you're going to love. It's Ultimate College Football Head Coach. In this amazing game and simulation, you get to step into the shoes of a head coach and lead your college football program to glory. Can you imagine actually being the head coach of the Red Raiders? From recruiting players, hiring coaching staff, to overseeing training camp and handling school scholarships, you control every crucial detail of your program. It's all in your hands. Think you can handle the pressure? Find out today. And even better, Ultimate College Football Head Coach is completely free, has no ads, and is 100% playable offline, so you can play on the go as you want and when you want. And of course, we've got a special offer for Locked On Texas Tech fans. Use our promo code LOCKEDONCFB. That's LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost for your program. Make sure you take advantage of this perk, as it's going to help your team get off to a strong start. To download the game, just visit ultimate-cfb.com. That's ultimate-cfb.com, or find it in the app stores, and kick off the ultimate football experience with Ultimate College Football Head Coach now, and begin your coaching legacy today. Today's episode brought to you by Ibotta, a free app that gives you the most cash back every time you shop on hundreds of items, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're buying. Other apps give you points that don't amount to much, but with Ibotta, just add your offers in the app, upload your receipt, and you can get real cash that you can cash out to your bank account, PayPal, or even gift cards. Join the over 50 million users and earn cash back every time you shop from over 2,700 brands and retailers, including Lowe's, Best Buy, and plenty more. And right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE when you register. So just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back, and use our code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's Ibotta, IBOTTA, in the Google Play or App Store, and use our code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. Now, when he was asked about keys, his initial question was, and he was told to give 3. Very demanding media audience today. He was told to give 3. He said quarterback health, quarterback health, quarterback health, and he expounded upon that sentiment a little further.
We spent a lot of time and what we think, how we can keep the quarterback healthy. I think it's really important that Barron understands. I've been really impressed. Even in scrimmages where he knows he's not going to get hit, him throwing the ball away whenever he's supposed to, I think he has been the best I've ever seen him in pocket presence, stepping up instead of trying to escape to his right or to his left. I think that's really important.
Chris, it's probably something that doesn't get talked about enough when we talk about QB health, because we go straight to O-line, justifiably so in a lot of ways. But there's also a pocket presence factor, a decision-making factor to that as well, and knowing maybe when to live to fight another down, so to speak.
Yeah, so I not something we've really talked a lot about, but the reality is here, and it's been understood that Baron Morton would be the starter. I mean, no secret, but this is the first year he really goes into the year as the starter. This is his first opening game as the starter. And I think there's a different vibe that comes with that, and a lot of time to think about it, and a lot of pyro and loud music and bright lights and band and all the stuff. So I'm interested to see how he does handle himself, because when you start playing ball, he's got to get down to the things that everybody's trying to impress upon him. Play the game the way we want you to play it, but manage the situation. It's just not worth it to do this or that or put yourself in harm's way. Easier said than done. Which is also why I really want to see some Cam Brown on, and I
was thinking the same thing, man.
And I think you'll see it.
Yeah.
I think you'll see it for a couple of reasons. I think you'll see it because they feel like it will work and it's a good changeup. But I think you'll specifically see it in the opener because you want Washington State to spend some time practicing against that and limiting what they can do, practicing what they may be looking at when number 2's back there at quarterback with whatever. So, I remember a coach telling me many years ago, there's a lot of times in the season where I'll attempt a fake, whether it be a field goal or a punt, and I'll do it on purpose. Whether it works or not, that's not the point. And you want to execute it, but from then on, every game after that, the opposition must work on that. That's one thing they've got to spend some practice time on. Like, well, they showed it in the first game, and they've got it in their playbook. And I think though that may be why you would see some Cam Brown out of the gate. We'll see, but because I think Coach Kitley alluded to that yesterday at the press conference, just kind of saying, yeah, we'll see some rotation and get him in there a little bit, and I'm excited about that. I want to see what that looks like because nobody really has seen this. You didn't see it in spring. If you were at a scrimmage, you wouldn't have seen it. If you were at a practice, you wouldn't have seen it. They don't let these guys get touched. They blow it dead. The honorary Tommy McVay whistle, who's back there like blowing it dead before anybody gets close. So this is kind of an unveiling of sorts if we get to see some of this, and I'll be shocked if we don't see it.
Yeah, and according to the coaching staff, going to be seeing it every weekend as the season rolls on. So I'll be curious to see how that plays out. Now, the other side of the coin, and this is something that you touched on throughout the year last year. There were obviously plenty of weeks where you might have felt like, the offense was stagnant, or why are we not lighting up the scoreboard in the way that some are expecting? And a lot of those things, fair enough, but you would continue to point out that the margin for error for the team in general was never very large, because at the same time, you did not have, while we're lacking a lot of dynamic ability offensively, you were also lacking a lot of dynamic ability defensively. And there were not a lot of big plays made on that side of the football, primarily in the takeaway category. Now, getting after the quarterback obviously goes hand in hand with that. And that was something else that Coach McGuire touched on after he discussed keeping our guy upright. He talked about knocking the other guy down. Mission, kill the quarterback, take the football away. Easier said than done, but they're going to be trying to make that a priority in 2024. Here again is Coach McGuire.
We have not done a good job of hitting the quarterback and causing turnovers. 2019, I was a part of a team that had 46 sacks and 31 turnovers. We need to get to that. If we get to that, then, we're going to have a special year. I think that's really important.
And of course, it's not rocket science. If you're getting anywhere near those kind of eye-popping numbers, you're competing for some hardware in November, I think you'd have to say.
Joey preaches this, the take three. And that is you want to take the ball away 3 times a game. And I think the numbers show if you do, the percentages go way up on winning the game. Doesn't mean that you need to be a +3 or whatever the margins would be. It's just if you create 3 takeaways in a game and get yourself 3 extra possessions, even if you give it away once or twice, but I just think that the 3 takeaways just skews the favorite heavily towards you. And last year, 17. I'm not. I mean, they told me there'd be no math, but you play 11 or 12 games. We go the 33, 36 ish range. 17. I mean, there's a significant gap there. You sacked the quarterback, I want to say 27 times. And to give you an idea of how big of the takeaway can be, I mean, just look at how the TCU game ended. I mean, on that Thursday night, I mean, you're scratching, you're clawing, you're going back and forth, and Josh Hoover drops back and he throws one to Rabbit, and he catches it, goes down. It's like party time. Here we go. I mean, this is you got it done on national TV against an opponent that you dislike. They dislike you, but it took a takeaway or two to get it done. But there just wasn't enough of that. A lot of the talk last year was like, golly, with the interceptions and this and that. You had QB problems, and it just all compounded. At BYU, you couldn't execute a handoff on your goal line or on the opposition's goal line, and it cost you. But where were the older group of playmakers? I mean, we knew about Miles Cole and Steve Linton last year. You had Bradford and Hutchings and these 2 old corners, and you had a NFL safety back there in Rabbit, and on it went. Just Braylon Lux would have had some of he could have checked the box a few times, but also I think that you had some untimely penalties that remove a lot of what Braylon Lux did and take it off the board a bit with a pick 6 or interceptions in general. But that's where it's got to be better, and it's all about pressure. You've got your scheme and then pressure and all that, but they've got to be better there. I totally agree with what Joey's saying. I think Tim echoed that. It's just you're not going to win big, and you're not going to win a conference championship unless those numbers are much better. Your offensive turnovers need to be lower. The takeaways need to be higher. That's your recipe.
That's what I was going to say. The margin really as a whole has got to improve. I think you were -6, something like that. Did give it away 5 times one night in Provo, Utah, for whatever that's worth. But you want to improve it on both sides of the ball. You want one to go down and one to go way up. All right, Chris, appreciate the insight and time as always. Enjoyed it. And when we're back together, we're one day closer to kickoff, baby, Saturday night from Jones Stadium. So looking forward to it as always. Thanks for the time.
Keep the hope alive, people. I salute you. Thank you very much. We will talk to you tomorrow.
That's right. And get subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. Thanks to those everydayers out there mixing it up in the YouTube comments. One of the best ways to help us grow the show is commenting anything below. For Chris, I'm Casey. Thanks for being out there, and we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.